We all have laptops, don't we? I bet you probably have one. At least one. And usually when we get laptops, we get one. Except I got 5 at the same time, and all 5 of them objectively suck. We're gonna look at each one, not in too much detail because seriously I need to make this video practical and not take a bajillion light years. So let's get started. Before I go into our first computer that we're gonna be looking at, I want to provide a brief bit of context. So this is the second part of a 2-part series on recent acquisitions that I got. Keyword here being quote unquote recent because I got these back in January and it's now March, so I think you can tell where my priorities were for the past couple months. But I got these computers for free because a competing content creator did not need them anymore. And guess who's local enough to be an inventory dump? Me. Alright, now enough with that. Let's get into these 5 horse books of the apocalypse. Alright, so this is an HP Pavilion Z4000 series, I think. Here on the right-hand side, we've got a disk drive, which is a DVD-ROM drive, which would have been really nice for the operating system this has, which is Windows 2000, and a PS2 port. On the rear, we've got the DC port, 2 USBs, Ethernet, S-Video, Parallel, Serial, and VGA, and also a melted heat vent. Then on the left hand side we've got a modem jack, a mini firewire, 2 audio jacks, and volume controls. And now let's go turn this thing on, except first things first, we've got to play the game of which DC port fits this thing. Yeah, this is gonna become a bit of a recurring gag in this video. Long story short, this Gateway MX6440 charger that I have been using with an MSI PR601 laptop. Oh god, what the that was weird. Is this one of those displays? And would you look at that? It's Windows 2000. There really isn't a lot on this installation of Windows 2000, namely drivers and whatever comes loaded with petabytes default Windows 2000 install. I don't have the same image, but I think you can get the point. As for our processor, it is an AMD Athlon XP 2400 Plus Mobile. And there is seemingly less than 500 megs of RAM. But it's Windows 2000, so we're not going to really drag this further because more computers. So let's move on to our next computer. Second thing second, it's the Gateway MX6440. Probably one of the least exciting computers in this thing because Gateway. The lamp in this display contains mercury, disposed according to local, state, and federal law. At least we know what brick it uses, though, because it's the brick that we previously just used. But here on the front, we've got audio jacks and nothing else. These are the only things on the front. On the right-hand side, we've got one of these things. I don't know what it is. I think it's an expansion bay of sorts. No, it's not. It's a PC card slot. Yeah, if I say something like, I don't know what this is later in this video, it's because I probably don't know what it is. Because I am not very familiar with laptops all that much. Mini firewire, a card reader, 2 USBs, Ethernet and modem ports, and 2 side-by-side USBs. At that rate, you might as well just group those 2 USBs up with the other 2, but I don't know, board or case design or something, I don't know. On the rear, we've got a DC port and a VGA port with the screws. And then last but not least, we've got a Kensington lock and a DVD drive on the left-hand side. Anyway, time to power this thing on, and what? Okay, let's pause that. So, that was clearly a blue screen, but it says unmountable boot device, which isn't a good sign. Yeah, we can't boot into Windows on this thing. So, what about trying a Linux distro? We're gonna just use Zornos because it's one of my most accessible disks at the moment. Not being biased, and besides it's a Zornos 2. So we're not gonna really be able to get a lot of system specs out of this thing, even with Linux, because no neofit or anything. And we're just gonna cut to the cheese. Trying to open the drive in Zornos, it says something about the partition table potentially being corrupt. I think that this partition table is probably yeah, just get a look at this thing in Gparted. If that doesn't look to to you, then I don't know what is. So there's not really a lot to speculate about. We're not going to really go over the specs in this case. So on to third things third, Compaq Presario V4000 of sorts. I now have a working Windows XP era Compaq Presario. But does that really matter all that much? But on the right hand side, we've got a DVD drive, audio jacks, USBs, VGA without screws, as video, and a Kensington lock. On the rear, as you can clearly see, we've got nothing. Yeah, nothing. So let's move on to the left-hand side. DC port, modem, Ethernet, docking port, 2 more USBs, mini firewire, a card reader, an express card slot, and a PCMIA slot. This time, upon powering it on, we've got a dim screen. So back to the old school lighting setup we go, I guess. This time we have a actually working Windows XP install. This PC has an Intel Pentium M and 2 gigabytes of RAM, and a whole lot of HP related things, so let's just move on. Jump cut to day 2 of this, and fourth things fourth, Dell Latitude E6420. Alright, you can see magnesium construction, so don't put this thing in a fire or something. Unless you really hate yourself. On the front here, we've got an SD card, and our right-hand side has an express card slot, as well as a DVD drive, 2 USB ports, and an eSATA. On the rear, we have HDMI, a Kensington lock, a modem cutout, DC, and Ethernet. On the left-hand side, we've got a USB, VGA, headphone jack, and a smart card reader. Alright, let's see if this thing works, and it kept not working, but seemed fine after I did a diagnostics test, so that's cool. Anyway, there's Ubuntu 10.10 on this thing, apparently from Dell, so that's quite cool, I guess. We're not going to really go over the specs on this computer either. And last things last, this Dell Vostro 3550, which doesn't seem to be in the best structural integrity. So, on the right-hand side, we've got a 34mm express card slot, a DVD drive, 2 audio jacks, and a USB. On the rear, we've got a Kensington lock, Ethernet port, USB port, screwless VGA, and DC port. Then, on the left-hand side, we've got another USB port, HDMI, eSATA, and a card reader. Booting this thing up, we get some very violent beeping, because I think its CMOS is dead and it has some sort of, like, anti-theft thing. Also, some of the keys don't work, and so we're probably going to need an external keyboard to mess around with this thing in the future. And this thing has unactivated Windows 7 on it that I'm not entirely confident if this is the recovery media, because in the system info, there is no OEM info. There are drivers for this thing, though, so I don't know. But it does have an Intel Core i5, so that's cool, I guess. And that's generally going to be about it. I do apologize if this video felt a little dry, I guess, and didn't have a lot of content in it. However, you've got to make do with when you're making a video about 5 laptops, and so I think that's probably good enough for computer acquisitions for now. Not to mention that I got that ThinkPad after I got these 8 computers. So now that we've got all the start of year obligatory things out of the way, let's get into some more fun things next week.